Hi friends, you're watching Faint Signals from Vega. So I wanted to talk about Marzieh Hashemi, who's an American citizen and journalist who's been living and working in Iran, and I wanted to talk about Whitney Webb's article in the Mint Press News just recently, January 16th, 2019. And Marzieh Hashemi has been detained by the US government. And a lot of people don't realize that that's completely legal by the US government because they've got the NDAA Act, the National Authorization Defense Act, which allows the government to detain US citizens without counsel indefinitely, and it even is legal to assassinate US citizens. And although Marzieh Hashemi is actually, she's an American citizen, a journalist, but she's been living in Iran and working in Iran for Press TV, which is Press TV is a sort of a news organization which you can see on YouTube, and it often has very good reports, and it talks about Western imperialism, and of course the US government doesn't, has their target on Iran at the present time, and so anything that they can do to upset Iran. And this is one of the things. I want to share with you a little bit of this article by Whitney Webb. And so it goes, Marzieh Hashemi, a US citizen and journalist who has been living and working in Iran, has been detained without charge or justification by the US government authorities since Sunday, when she arrived in Lambert International Airport in St. Louis to visit her sick brother. Well, what a wonderful thing that is for her to have to experience this now while her brother is sick. However, her family was not notified until 48 hours after her detention. Hashemi, an African-American born in New Orleans, who later converted to Islam and currently works as a journalist for the Iranian English language news network Press TV, has since transferred to a detention facility, in Washington at the request of the FBI, according to reports from Press TV and Associated Press. U.S. officials have yet to provide any justification for Hashemi's detention. Once Hashemi was allowed to speak to her family in the United States, she detailed a slew of abuses she had suffered during her detention, which were clear violations of her religious rights. For instance, Hashemi told her family that her hijab or head covering had been ripped off by prison guards and that she had been forced to pose for her mugshot with her hair exposed. Furthermore, Hashemi was also offered pork for food, even though meat is forbidden under Islamic law. She was subsequently denied any other halal or vegetarian food after turning the pork down. Her daughter told Press TV that Hashemi has been living off crackers since she was first detained on Sunday. Hashemi's daughter also stated that her mother stated that she had been, quote, shackled, end quote, and was being treated like a criminal in spite of the fact that no charges have been filed against her. See, this is what's appalling about the NDAA, the National Defense Authorization Act, which Chris Hedges challenged in court, and which was later overturned by a judge. He won that challenge against Obama, and then it was overturned, sadly, after that. But this is the sort of country that claims that it's for, freedom and democracy, and this is how they treat people, American citizens. This is somebody who now lives in another country, Iran. This is just harassment, basically. While the FBI has refused to comment on Hashemi's arrest at the time of this article's publication, Iran's foreign ministry spokesperson Bahram Qasimi vocally condemned Hashemi's arrest, calling it, quote, a blatant violation of human rights that shows the U.S. government does not adhere to any of the principles that it uses as pretext to attack its critics. Qasimi continued, stating that, quote, the abrupt arrest of a Muslim U.S. national and journalists and the US government's agents' humiliating and inhumane behavior in abusing this lady, who is a practicing Muslim, are a clear example of behavior that an apartheid regime adopts against its non-white citizens, end quote. Hashemi's arrest took place as US Secretary of State Mike Pompeo was conducting his multinational, quote, anti-Iran tour, end quote, through the Middle East in a bid to quote, get Arab countries to work together to roll back Iranian influence in the region and take on the militias Iran is backing, end quote. Pompeo's tour comes in furtherance of the Trump administration's aggressive Iran policy, which has seen it not only withdraw from the Iran nuclear deal, the JCPOA, despite Iran's compliance, but also impose draconian sanctions on the Islamic Republic. Furthermore, past and recent revelations have shown that top Trump officials, such as the National Security Advisor John Bolton and Pompeo himself, have been working overtime to enact regime change in Iran, either by covert means or a, quote, shock and awe, end quote, bombing campaign that could spark a much wider war. And by the way, Pompeo thinks that there's a war between Islam and Christianity. He's really loopy. This background has led some to suspect that Hashemi's arrest was aimed at placing additional pressure on Iran's government and the Iranian English language network Press TV, which is affiliated with Iran's state-funded broadcaster, the IRIB, as part of the Trump administration's wider policy of aggression towards Iran. If this is the case, Hashemi's status as a U.S. citizen shows that the Trump administration has no qualms about trampling the constitutional rights of American citizens if it furthers a foreign policy objective. Beyond the Trump administration's aggressive Iran policy, there seems to be other hints that Hashemi's detention is politically motivated. For instance, prominent U.S. news outlets have reported on the detention using headlines like, quote, Iran claims U.S. is holding Iranian state TV news anchor Marzieh Hashemi, end quote, or, quote, Iran's state TV channel says anchorwoman held in U.S., end quote. Such headlines downplay the arrest and imply that Hashemi's detention is merely an unconfirmed claim being made by Iran's government or its affiliates, despite the fact that the journalist's arrest has been confirmed by her family. These reports also deflect government responsibility by Hashemi's unlawful detention and poor treatment by citing the fact that Iran is currently holding an estimated 4 American citizens on espionage charges. However, they fail to note that Hashemi's detention without specific charges is a violation of her rights as an American citizen and is only, quote, legal, end quote, by virtue of the controversial, quote, indefinite detention, end quote, clause of the National Defense Authorization Act. As the American Civil Liberties Union has noted, this clause allows the president to order or approve the indefinite detention of anyone, U.S. citizen or not, if they are deemed dangerous by the executive branch. Yes, she's dangerous. She's a grandma. I mean, she's a grandma and she's a newsreader. Not that grandmas can't be dangerous, but I mean, seriously, you know? The government's failure to comment on Hashemi's detention makes it difficult to analyze specifically what her arrest means. However, her detainment should serve as a chilling wake-up call for journalists, Muslim Americans, and all U.S. citizens. Exactly. This is what they can do, and this is sort of the sort of thing that they intended to do when they brought in the National Defense Authorization Act under Obama. So that was by Whitney Webb, who's a staff writer for Mint Press News and a contributor to Ben Swann's Truth in Media. This is where we're at now, you know. This is the sort of thing that fascist governments do. This is the sort of thing that Bolsonaro in Brazil would do. He's an outright fascist, and Trump is just the manifestation of something that has been going on now. I mean, Obama approved this National Defense Authorization Act, which allows the government to just detain people and without counsel and without charges indefinitely. So they can hold her for as long as they like, and it's perfectly legal in the US. This is the sort of thing that fascist governments do. So, you know, do what you can. If you live in the US, call your US representative and insist that this woman, this journalist and press TV anchor, is released. It's just outrageous. And if this was done to any US journalist by Iran, there'd be all-out war. This is the thing. It's what's good for one. It's okay as long as it's okay if we do it, but if anybody else does it, as far as the US is concerned, you know, it's outrageous. You know, so so do what you can to call for the end of this detention and allow this woman to visit her brother and then return safely home to Iran to continue on her news, and to also allow her the freedom, religious freedom, to wear her hijab and to give her appropriate food, halal food, that is appropriate under her religion. So it's just outrageous and disgusting, and it's really just bullying, because the US has its target on Iran. Bolton and Pompeo, the Secretary of State Pompeo, want to invade Iran, and this is just another way of aggravating Iran, to show their contempt for Iran, and also to possibly have some sort of political manipulation using this particular journalist. So it's just disgusting, and I don't know. It's just going to get worse and worse. There's more and more of this arrogance and outrageousness by the U.S. empire. So we have to put out this information to others, because as you can see, the mainstream media are just taking their talking points from the government and from the CIA, and they don't really care about the rights of this journalist, who is an American citizen, by the way. One day, this is probably going to come back to bite these silly mainstream media journalists. If they think that once their usefulness runs out in a fascist sort of a system, they will also be targets. You know, that's how it goes. You only had to see what happened under Hitler. If anybody was inconvenient or of no use, out they went, or they were knocked off by his regime. Anyway, this is sort of Hitler-esque behavior, so we must do what we can to push against fascism. Okay, well, thanks so much for watching. My name's Trish Roberts. You're watching Faint Signals from Vega. Till next time, bye for now.